Hello, thank you so much for joining me today. Today we have something brand new that we're starting. This video is kicking off a 2-week series, basically learning piano from scratch. If you've been interested in learning the piano, you don't know anything, you've never had a single piano lesson, welcome to your first piano lesson. I would encourage you to watch this lesson from the piano so that you can start playing along with certain things. This will be a quite interactive video, and the whole series is designed to be interactive so that you can take what I'm telling you and immediately sit down and do it. We're doing everything in bite-sized pieces, really easy to follow, and some things might be moving a little bit quickly because I know that you can pause and do as many repetitions as you need on your own. And if you have any questions, save this video, let me know in the comments if you have specific questions, and you can always just keep coming back and watching these over and over again until everything really sinks in. And then I guess the last thing that you need to know before we dive right in is that I have created a detailed booklet for every single lesson in this series. So today will run probably around half an hour. And then the next 2 weeks, we're going to have brand new videos every single day that will run about 10 minutes. And every day we'll have a small workbook that goes along because it's going to be a lot of information. You'll really get the most out of this 2-week series if you're playing alongside the videos, printing out the booklets, and then doing all of the follow-up work there as well. So like I said, today's lesson will run around 30 minutes probably, and then every day after today for 2 weeks will be 10 minutes per day. And if you take the 10 minutes from that video, from those videos, and then practice another 5 or 10 minutes on top of that, you're really going to see that, hey, I can play the piano in just 10 to 20 minutes a day, and especially in the early phases. So without further ado, let's make our way to the keys and let's get started. We're going to be really hands-on through this whole process, and I want to make sure that we're both sitting at the piano so that you can see what I'm doing, see what I'm playing, and then immediately apply that at your own piano as well. I'm going to be going into some things that maybe seem quite obvious, but it's always better to just kind of consciously say things even if they seem obvious, because sometimes they don't quite sink in if we don't have that act of verbalization. So we are at the piano, we're looking at our keys, and as we move to the right, the notes are getting higher, so you can play some of the higher notes, and as we move to the left, the notes are getting lower. So the key all the way to the left of the piano is the lowest, the key all the way to the right is the highest. A standard piano has 88 keys, so if you have 88 keys on your piano, the lowest key is going to be A, the highest key is going to be C. There are some variations, especially some older acoustic pianos don't always have all of the higher notes. Have a good look at your piano, see how many keys you have, just so that if you're comparing between yours and mine and something seems different, that would be why. But anyway, high notes to the right, low notes to the left. Then, keeping things extremely obvious, we have white keys and we have black keys. All of the keys on the piano are equally important. We're going to need them for different things over time. For now, we're going to be using the black keys more for orientation than for anything else. Because we have 88 keys, we need to find a way to find our way around a bit more organically so that we don't have to stop and think every single time we want to play a key. Our black keys alternate in groups of 2 and 3. So all the way across the piano, we have groups of 2 and 3 alternating. The exception being the lowermost group just has 1. It would be a group of 3. We just don't have any more keys after that. That's why there's only 1 black key down there. And then we're ready for the white keys. So the white keys on the piano have alphabet letters as their names. So our musical alphabet goes from A to G, and every single key receives one of those letters. So for example, the lowermost note I already told you is A, then we have B, C, D, E, F, G, and then we just start over from A, and this pattern repeats over and over again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. You might be realizing, okay, that doesn't help me very much. It's good to get an overview, but then if you want to sit down and say, that's G. You don't want to have to count from the bottom of the piano, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, obviously. So now we're going to break this down into bite-sized pieces, and this is something that you're going to have to practice over and over. We're going to review this over the next several days, so that when you play a note, you immediately know D, A, F, and so on. Because you need to be able to recognize the keys as quickly as you would recognize a letter written on a page. It's the same type of thing that needs to be just an automatic association. We get there by breaking that into chunks. So I think that the easiest note to find on the piano is D, because if we find a group of 2 black keys, then the white key right in the middle of that is D. So ones together, let's play all of the groups of 2. So I want you to actually play the group of 2 black keys and then jump to the D that's in the middle. 2, D, 2, D, 2, D, 2, D, 2, D, 2, D. Great. Now from now on, we're not going to do every single note on the piano like we just did. That's an example for you. From now on, I'm going to show you. We might practice a couple together and then press pause on the video, practice finding them as quickly as you can on your piano, and then continue. So now that we have our D, and we know that the keys are the musical alphabet, and they go in order, they're not scrambled up or anything, then we can really quickly figure out what the 2 white keys are to each side of our D. So then we have C, D, E. And it doesn't matter which fingers you're playing these patterns with for now. Right now, we're just working on finding the keys, playing them, and building this association. Bonus points if you're naming the notes alongside playing them. So let's play 2 groups of C, D, E together. Find a group of 2 black keys and then play C, D, E. 2 black keys, C, D, E. Now press pause on your video, keep practicing that, and meet me back right here. Once you've got the hang of C, D, E, the next logical step would be F, probably. So F is to the left of the groups of 3 black keys. So anytime you find a group of 3 black keys, immediately to the left is F. So go ahead and press pause, find all of your Fs really quickly across the piano. If it takes you some time, don't worry about it. We're going to keep reviewing this. The more you review it, the more quickly, the more automatically you're going to be recognizing these notes. From there, we can expand our pattern to F, G. So then you know that F is to the left of the 2 black keys and G is going to be immediately to the right of that. So find some different groups of F, G, F, G, F, G, and play those all over the piano. And then if you want bonus points, go ahead and start practicing G, F, G, F, G, F. Because of course, music doesn't just move up. We also need to be moving up and down the piano. And notes will be repeating. We're also going to be skipping around. For now, we're starting with basics and just recognizing the different notes on the piano. From F and G, we have then 5 of our 7 white keys, of our 7 musical notes. Now we're going to do one more group of 3, actually. We're going to practice A, B, C. So B is immediately to the right of the 3 black keys. And if you ever have troubles finding A and B, you know where C is. We've learned C already. You can start with C and practice this pattern backwards for starters. You can play C, B, A, C, B, A. And then once you've gotten comfortable with that pattern, then you can switch it around and play A, B, C, A, B, C. And you might feel silly sitting at the piano saying these letters while you're playing it, but I really believe that this just helps us internalize the topics faster. Just like when you're learning a new language, you're going to be sitting there sounding things out, going bit by bit. Don't feel like it's too simple. It's these really basic steps that we build in the beginning of our learning process that make a big difference in the long run. If you have a really solid foundation from the beginning, it might seem tedious, it might seem like it takes too much time, or like it might just seem too simplified, but in the long run, you're really going to thank yourself for taking these steps. So that's the musical alphabet. You've learned all of the keys that you need on the piano. Now that you've learned your way around the keys, let's take a little closer look at how we should be sitting at the piano, how we should be playing, what we need to be doing with our bodies while we're playing piano, because of course it's not just a mental exercise. We have a lot going on physically as well. So you want to make sure that you're sitting up nice and tall. You actually want to be sitting close towards the front of the bench. We don't want to sit at the back of the bench and kind of sink in. Obviously, this would be way too far away. I can't reach the keys. But there is a tendency that people kind of scoot the bench up really close under the piano, sit towards the back, and sure, it's comfortable. It maybe is harder to sit with good posture. And because if you're sitting up nice and tall, then you're going to have a different relationship to the piano. And we do always want to be using good posture. So you probably need the bench farther back than you realize. I usually have it around there. And then you want to sit on the front edge so that your weight is slightly going into the piano, actually. It's a bit like the football player that hikes the ball to the quarterback. I'm not a football person. My dad and brother are for sure, if they're watching this, rolling their eyes at me. That's the extent of my knowledge. It's just that we want this slightly forward center of gravity so that the weight of our body is actually being directed towards the piano, because we don't just play the piano with our fingers, and we don't need to be picking up our fingers a lot when we're playing the piano. It's actually a lot of the weight from our arm, a lot of the weight from our upper body is going into the keys, and our fingers are kind of catching that weight. We do need to move our fingers, but it's not this sort of exaggerated tense movement. It's a quite natural finger movement. So sit up nice and tall. You don't want to be too low. I might be a little bit on the low side, actually. I do sit lower than an average person maybe would, but in general, if you have more or less a nice L shape in your arm, you're probably okay. You don't want your elbow to be too much below the level of the keys. It is good to have an adjustable bench, and if you have an adjustable bench that has hydraulics, that's a luxury. Then you don't have to be cranking the knobs all the time. But this is maybe a little bit better position. I've maybe been sitting too low for a while. So just kind of a nice relaxed L shape. It can be a little bit higher than that also, but that's kind of the shape we want. Nice distance, because we do need to be able to move freely. And what else do we need to know about posture? Yeah, a common thing is that when we sit at the piano, sometimes our shoulders start to hunch up. Make sure that they stay nice and relaxed away from your ears. And then hand position. We do not want flat fingers. That's true. A lot of times, piano teachers tend to exaggerate in the wrong direction. They say, we don't want flat fingers, we want curved fingers. But curved fingers is actually also an incredibly unnatural position for the hand. It's extremely tense, and it's also not really conducive to healthy playing. What we want is basically, if you're to stand up, and the position that your hand is in while you're standing, this is the most relaxed position for your hand. And then if you just pick your hand up, this is the position we want. There's a natural curve to the fingers. They're not straight like an iron sheet, but they're also not curved like you're trying to hold a ball or something. This hold the ball, let there be a bubble under your hand. It's not, I don't find it super helpful, because it does tend to cause a lot of tension. And in general, we don't need to play with the very tips of our fingers. There will be times when you want to do that. In general, we want to play with the cushy part of the pad of our finger. One of my teachers used to call that the pancake of the finger. Just imagine that there's a little cushion there, not right on the tip. You're not walking on tippy toes. It's just, we're coming from this natural position, and there's the pad of the finger that's primarily the contact point with the key. And then our fingers. So that's the finger position. We have 5 fingers, and we need to number them, because when we're playing, we need to know which finger should be playing at a given time. It's fairly straightforward. Thumbs are 1, pointer fingers are 2, middle fingers are 3, ring fingers 4, little fingers 5, 1 to 5, quite straightforward. If you've played guitar or violin, for example, then the pointer finger would be finger 1 because they don't use the thumbs. Piano, we use all 5 fingers, so the thumb is number 1. The other thing I want you to just consciously acknowledge is that our hands are mirror image. They're not in the same position. The thumbs are facing each other. So that's important because when we're playing music that is in parallel motion, music that moves in the same direction at the same time, the fingerings are going to be different. If we're playing something that's in contrary motion, so it's the same pattern but in opposite directions, that's when we would have the same fingering for each hand. And it's just important to recognize that once so that it doesn't lead to any confusion when you're trying to figure out fingerings, or if you're wondering why is this not working like I think it should. The other thing to keep in mind is that contrary motion is actually much simpler for the brain to process than parallel motion. If you think about it, it's much easier to do this motion than it is to do this motion. This is also not complicated. It's not hard in any way. It's just more complicated than this. And it's the same for our hands. When we're playing patterns, hands together, sometimes it's much easier to play things that are in contrary motion as opposed to parallel motion, just because our brain is much more used to coordinating things that have this contrary motion. Now, I intentionally distracted you before we have a little quiz, because now I want to go back really fast to the keys on the piano and just quickly check how many you know automatically already. So we'll start with an easy one. We'll start with D. So I'm going to tell you a letter and then I will show you the answer. I'll give you a moment to find it on your own, and then if you want more time, you can always press pause. So here we go. We're starting with D, which is, we learned, right between our 2 black keys. And then look for G. And from there, let's find a C. And from there, let's find A. F. E. B. I didn't always show you the closest option on the keys, but I also want you to try to be just looking to a random part of the piano and trying to activate this idea of I can find them as quickly as possible. And I want you to think about where each letter is in comparison to the black keys. That if you're able to do that, then you're really secure. It's going to be much faster in the long run than thinking, okay, I'm on C, I need E, C, D, E. That you just know there is E. We need both of these processes. Both are very important. And now that we've reviewed all of those notes, now we can start a fun exercise that will help you practice every single note on the piano. We're not going to play every single key on the piano, but all of the white keys will be covered through this exercise. It's actually kind of the basis for, I'm just going to make up a number here, but 70% of pop songs, if you can play these 4 chords that we're going to work through, you will have a huge jump start on any pop song that you would ever want to learn. So I'll show you how this works. It's kind of an improvisation, kind of an exercise. And the nice thing about improvisation is if it doesn't go strictly according to plan, that's fine, because it's an improvisation. You've just created another avenue. You've just created something new. It also removes a lot of the pressure of doing something perfectly. I'll play it once for you, and then I'll walk you through how to do this on your own. So let's walk through that together. Basically, it's a collection of 4 different chords, and you're just going to be repeating that over and over and over again. It can be helpful to name the notes again in this exercise. So the hands are starting in the same position. Both hands need to play C, E, G, And to do it exactly like I just played it, they will be playing in parallel motion, which means that the fingerings will be different. So the right hand will play 1, 3, 5, and the left hand will play 5, 3, 1. Both hands are playing C, E, G, but the fingerings will be different. I'll show you variations later on. So let's try to walk through that together. C, E, G, and the left hand is copying everything the right hand does. C, E, G. Then for the first couple of chords that we're playing here, the right hand is going to slide over so that the thumb is right next to the left hand thumb. And the right hand is going to play A, C, E, and then the left hand is going to find exactly those notes and play them one spot lower on the piano. A, C, E. Right hand slides over so that the thumbs are neighbors. F, A, C, F, A, C. And then here we have our first change. Now the right hand is going to everything is going to slide up one white key. So from the F, your thumb is going to slide over to G, A, B, D, C, D. And the left hand is going to do the same. And then we're playing the same skipping pattern. We're playing a white key, G, so we're skipping over the A, playing B, skipping over the C, playing D, and the left hand copies that. And then we're going to move everything back to where we started, to C. You might notice I'm using the pedal. It sounds really nice with pedal. Feel free to add pedal as well. You don't have to. If that's overwhelming for you, it sounds fine without the pedal. It's still a nice pattern. It's still harmonious. To keep in mind with the pedal, there are a few changes that you need to make. Either you can change the pedal every single time the hands change positions. That's the cleanest sound. Otherwise, after you play your F chord and you need to switch over to G, this G, B, D, there is where you really need to change it. Otherwise, it's going to sound quite muddy. If you don't change it, it doesn't sound bad. It might sound a bit, like I said, muddy. It might sound a bit too thick. It might sound not quite what you're expecting. Don't let that overwhelm you. Pedal is just, if you start playing around, toying around with the pedal now, it's going to make your life much easier later when we're going to really be needing the pedal. And so this is your chance to test it out without any pressure, without any big coordination struggles. It's just, you're playing around with it. I want to show you one more thing with this pattern, and then I'll show you one or two variations that you can also use. So what we're playing here are essentially chords. You don't need to worry about what a chord is. We're going to cover that more in detail later on. We're going to learn them bit by bit. Don't worry about it. It's just they happen to be chords, everything that we're doing here. And the pattern is made up of C, we skip over one note to the next, we skip over the D to the E, we skip over the F to the G, and that's our chord. And all of these chords are going to have this same pattern of first finger, third finger, fifth finger, and then we just transpose that to different positions on the piano. So C, E, G, A, skip over B to C, skip over D to E, F, skip over G to A, skip over B to C, and so on. But don't get caught up in the technical side of that. Just know that you're looking for C, E, G, C, E, G, A, C, E, A, C, E, F, A, C, F, A, C, G, B, D, G, B, D, and start over from C, and that goes, you can just loop that over and over and over again. But you don't have to do it the same way every single time. You might have noticed that now I'm doing a slightly different rhythm than before. The first way I showed you, you have a small break between each hand so that you have time to look and see, okay, what's coming now, what's coming now? You have time to move, you have time to adjust. I would recommend starting that way for that reason, that you have time to stop, think, see what's going on. If you're looking for more of a challenge, then you can try to do this continuous flow. So C, E, G, C, E, G, A, C, E, without any breaks, right? That's all fine. Another variation that you can do here, I had mentioned before that contrary motion is simpler for the brain to process. If you're having troubles coordinating this, what you can do is play 1, 3, 5 in the right hand, and then play 1, 3, 5 in the left hand. And then your thumb is still going to slide over and be the neighbor, 1, 3, 5, and then you just need to look that you're finding the same position in the next chord. 1, 3, 5. Thumb slides over to be the neighbor. 1, 3, 5. 1, 3, 5. Slide up. 1, 3, 5. Slide up. 1, 3, 5. And then start over. But whichever variation you choose on this pattern, and feel free to test out all of them, it's a nice exercise to get to know the notes on the piano better and to play something that's not a super simple beginner melody. It's already something that's really fun and pleasing to hear. It's fun to play, it's enjoyable to listen to, and that's something that's sometimes missing in beginner piano world, let's say. And so do dive headfirst into that exercise, and just, even if you struggle with it, keep coming back to it, keep testing it out, and you'll notice that you will catch on to everything that's going on there. Now, I had mentioned rhythms, and we can't have a piano lesson without talking about rhythm. And I will preface here, I would say that probably half of the people who come to me for piano lessons say, okay, but I have no sense of rhythm. Just be warned, I have no sense of rhythm. I don't know where this concern and where this misconception comes from, because of all elements of music, rhythm is the most natural because we have rhythm in our bodies. Our heartbeat has a rhythm, our breathing has a rhythm, our stride while we're walking, when you're chopping things in the kitchen, all of that has a steady rhythm. Just so many elements of daily life have rhythm that we don't notice. And there's, for whatever reason, this fear among students that they don't have a solid sense of rhythm. And it's important to address this early on, because if you go into piano lessons, I mean, it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you go into piano lessons saying, okay, I like music, but I have no rhythm, then you're always going to have that prejudice against yourself. And you're always, anytime that your rhythm is off, you're going to immediately attribute it to the fact that you have no rhythm. And I don't want you to use that excuse, because I believe that everyone has rhythm, and we do have to harness it a little bit. It does take conscious effort, and it can often happen that while we're playing piano, rhythm is one of the first things that gets neglected, just because there's so much happening when we're playing a new piece. We're reading the notes, we're looking for the notes on the piano, we're thinking about fingering, we're thinking, oh, is this right? We have all these worries. Am I loud enough? Is this hand too loud? Is it staccato? Is it legato? We have all these concerns that get in the way. And it's just like, anytime there's a lot going on, you have to cut something out, right? Drivers will know this phenomenon. You're driving, you get into some heavy traffic, and what's the first thing you do? You turn down the radio, because not because you need your ears to see, but you just need this extra layer of focus, and you need to remove some sort of distraction. And rhythm is kind of the radio in the car when you're driving and you hit some traffic. As soon as a lot starts happening at the piano, rhythm gets turned down really fast. And that's okay in the beginning stages. You just have to consciously build it back in once you've managed all of the other factors. Okay, rant over. Now, let's just address a few basic elements of rhythm. So for starters, we're going to be dealing mostly with what we call 4/4 time, because rhythm in music is usually a matter of organizing our sound so that we can keep track of where we are in the music, and we need to break it down into digestible chunks. We call these chunks measures, and measures have a certain number of beats. The most common is 4 beats per measure. You'll notice it in your music with a 4/4 at the beginning, or sometimes it's written as a C, which stands for common time, because it's so common that they called it common time. And a lot of what we learn in music is built around that. So with that context, let's start with the different types of notes that we have for our rhythm. We're not going to dive into every single one today, But for today, we're just covering 4/4 time, and we're going to cover 4 or 5 basic rhythms. The first rhythm is called a whole note. It's called a whole note because it takes up the whole measure. And if our measure has 4 beats, then the whole note gets 4 beats, right? Then our next note is a half note. Again, it's called a half note because it takes up half a measure, which means that it's a half note, which doesn't get half a beat. I know that can get confusing. I used to mix up the terminology when I was younger. It's called a half note because it's half a measure. The measure is 4 beats. Half note gets 2 beats. Good. Quarter note, exact same logic. A quarter note takes up 1/4 of the measure, receives 1 beat, period. And then we have eighth notes, which means that they take up 1/8 of the measure, which means that 8 of them fit into 4 beats, which means that 1/8 note equals half a beat. That's all you need to know for rhythm for starters. Rhythms tend to be in this binary system of, it's kind of like Russian nesting dolls. Each one is half the size of the one before. There will be exceptions to that. We will meet some new rhythms over the next several days also, but it's really not complicated. It's not rocket science. Even if you don't like math, you can still have excellent rhythm, and it doesn't have to be any sort of complicated, scary thing. That's the only rant I have for you on rhythm today. We're not going to worry about it anymore. We're just learning where we're starting off, and tomorrow we will do some more rhythm exercises. We'll go a bit more in depth on that, but for today, that's all you need to worry about. I want you to really understand those 5 kinds of notes and the logic behind their names and how they're related to each other, and that's all you need to know for today. From there, let's move on to our very first song on the piano. We're going to be learning, for starters, Amazing Grace, and we're just going to do it in a very simple way. We're not going to be reading music today. We will, at the very end of today's lesson, look at a few elements of note reading, but we're not going to be playing from the staff today. We're just going to be learning the notes of the names and then kind of playing by ear based on the notes that I'm giving you. So, Amazing Grace, we're going to need both hands, and the orientation point that I didn't tell you before, because until now we haven't really needed it, is at some point we will be playing music based on a very specific point on the piano. For most music, it's not optional if you play G here or here or here or here. It's going to be very specifically written for example, this position, which is the position we're starting in for Amazing Grace. And so we do need to learn some orientation points. The main orientation point that we use on the piano is middle C. And middle C is just the C that's closest to the middle of the piano. It's usually somewhere near the name of the piano. If you want to be sure that you have the right C and you have a standard sized piano, you're going to have 1, 2, 3 C's below middle C and 1, 2, 3 above that are obvious, and then the uppermost key, if you have 88 keys, is also C, so there are actually 4 C's above it. That's where we're starting out. Then the left hand is going to be starting with the 3rd finger on G. The right hand is starting with the 1st finger on C. I'll play for you once, and then I'll walk you through step by step how to learn this song. So in order to play this, we need 5 notes in the right hand, and we actually only need 2 in the left hand. The left hand is going to be playing G and A. The right hand will be playing C, D, E, F, G. In terms of how to find the rhythm for this song, as long as you know this song, just kind of trust your gut this time through. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to be starting with more rhythms and how to really consciously bring rhythm into our playing. For today, we're just finding our way around the piano, getting introduced to the basics and going from there. So we're starting with 3 on G, and then from there we go to 1 on C. And then we need E, C, E, so 3, 1, 3. Then D, left hand. And then that kind of repeats, G, C, E, C, E. And then here we take a different turn. We go D, and then up to G. D, G, and then this G is really, really long, so just hold on to it for a while. Then comes E, G, E, C, E, D, C, A, G, and then it's kind of a repetition again. G, C, E, C, E, D, C. And that's all there is to learning music. We break things down, songs that we've heard probably a million times before, we break them down into bite-sized chunks. We go bit by bit through, and then you do that over and over. You repeat that several times, and it's sunk in. So now let's try that again, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit bigger chunk each time. So we have G, C, E to start with. Then comes D, C, A, G. And then it starts basically the same. G, C, E, D, G, up to G this time. Then we start working our way back. E, G, E, D, C, A, G. G, C, E, D, C. That will be in your download packet. If you haven't downloaded that yet, please go do that now so that you don't forget, and then you'll be able to practice that also on your own without always referring back to the video. One last note about reading music, and then we're ready to finish up for today. So we're going to start with actually just 3 notes on what we call the grand staff. In the grand staff, we play, the right hand plays on the top section and the left hand plays on the bottom section. The top section usually has what we call the treble clef. The bottom section has what we call the bass clef. And then exactly in the middle from those two is our middle C. So we're centering, for starters, when we're reading music around this position. Middle C is kind of available for both hands, and then the right hand will be starting here, the left hand will be starting here. The top clef has this swirly thing, and we call that the treble clef. We can also call that the G clef, because the line that intersects and kind of makes a target with the treble clef symbol is G, and that's going to be our first landmark note. I want you to really memorize this G and know exactly how it looks, so that anytime you see that G in your sheet music, you're going to immediately know that's G. Middle C is pretty simple to identify because it has its own little line. And for starters, that's going to be the only note that has this line. It can happen in the treble clef, which means that the right hand is going to be playing the middle C. And we can also have it in the bass clef, which means that the left hand will be playing the middle C. And bass clef, I've referenced already without telling you what it is, but you probably figured out, the bottom clef. And the bass clef is the one that has 2 dots, and the line between those 2 dots is F. So like we can call the treble clef the G clef, we can also call the bass clef the F clef, and that's the F right below middle C. And so these 3 notes are going to be our initial reference points. I want you to really sear these into your brain. I want you to be able to look at an overwhelming page of music and still be able to say, that's G, that's C, that's F. And to really know those super well, that to the point that it won't even be distracting, that there's all of this other stuff flying around that you haven't learned yet. Those 3 we really need to solidify. Because just like when you move to a new city, you start to find your landmarks. We need our landmarks when we're reading music. It's something that we can hold on to. If we ever get lost, we come back to our safety. these safety points, these landmark notes. From there, we can quickly build upon that and recognize every single note on the staff. We're going to really, I'm a huge proponent of learning quality reading skills. It's something that I struggled with when I was younger, and I was so relieved for my students when I found that there is a systematic way to go about this and to learn how to read, and you don't actually have to suffer through the whole process. So these 3 notes, memorize them. They're in your workbook. I want you to do that before we meet back here tomorrow so that you already have a jump start on reading music, because it doesn't have to be scary. On that note, you've just completed your very first piano lesson. Congratulations. I hope that you've enjoyed this lesson. I hope you've learned something new, and meet me back here tomorrow. We are starting a 14-day challenge. Every single day, there's going to be a 10-minute video for you so that you can play alongside and then practice a little bit more on your own once you finish the video. And in 2 weeks, you will have learned at least 3 different songs like Amazing Grace, and we'll have learned several different ones that you will also learn on the staff. We're going to develop quality reading skills. We're going to develop how to play by ear. Those are 2 skills that can actually work really well together. It doesn't have to be this dichotomy of either I play really well by ear or I play really well with sheet music, but don't ask me to do the other one. They can actually work well together if we build up that foundation together. They can be complementary skills. And we're going to do a lot of things hands-on. It's going to be just like today, that I'm going to tell you a few things that you need to know to move forward, and then you're going to sit down at the piano and do it on your own right away and in context. So please join me back here tomorrow. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notifications when new videos are online. And I am so excited to invite you on this journey with me. So I will see you back here tomorrow.